Welcome back to another beautiful day in the land of music. My name is Douglas, and in today's video, I'm going to be giving you 5 tips on how to use the Nord Stage 4 just a little bit better. Hopefully, maybe you learned something from this video, maybe you know all of these, but we're gonna have a lot of fun. And I'd like to just say, before we jump into this video, thank you for your patience as I put the final touches on my Essentials training course for the Nord Stage 4. Super excited to have that released. If you're interested in that, I've got a link in the description, or just go to dsoundman.com. You can sign up to that, and it walks you start to finish through the entire Nord. But in this video, I'm gonna cover 5 tips using different functions on the Nord Stage 4 to improve your workflow and improve just your process of building and playing sounds on this amazing keyboard. So let's jump right into this video. I've got this beautiful B42 here. It's got a little bit of delay and stuff on these sounds. It's the Royal Grand 3D. I get lost in this keyboard. It's so much fun to play, but the first tip that I want to cover is using the monitor function. Now, this little button here gives you access to see a parameter value before you twist that knob. So there's a couple of different controls on the Nord Stage 4. Encoders like the program and piano select are endless. Same with these underneath the synth screen is you can just spin them 360 degrees. There's no start and stop. The knobs themselves for all the parameter values have this little white bar on them, and they have a start stop. So max, min, and you can't twist them 360. They actually have a start and a stop. What's a bit inconvenient about non-360 knobs is the parameter within the program might not always be what's reflected on the physical control itself. So for example, if we come over to layer B, this is that bright tines, and this one here, it's got some delay on it, right? But the feedback, tempo, and dry wet, probably not what's actually physically on these knobs. So short of just twisting the knob and seeing what the display is here on the screen, so I twisted it, and it automatically is going to jump the parameter value to wherever that knob is currently at. So that's not a great way, because I don't know what it was set to originally. It sounds like they have a little bit less than maybe what the knob was physically set at. So a better way to do this is to use the monitor function. And all we need to do is hold down on the monitor button and twist a knob. And what that's going to do is it's going to tell us on the screen the current value of that particular parameter without affecting the actual parameter value itself within the program. So let's move away and come back to this program so we have a fresh one. So let's check out what these delay parameters are by holding monitor, and then we're going to twist the knob and watch the screen. So on the screen, you can see we have the delay tempo is set to 411 milliseconds. Pretty cool. The feedback itself is set to 5, and the dry wet is set to 10. Now what we can do is if we want to adjust a parameter, we know, for instance, on the dry wet, if I want more or less, I need to bring it up to 10. And I know they had it on max apparently. So the maximum of value here, if I wanted less of that, I can bring it back from there. Again, I could hold on the tempo. I could see it set to 411 milliseconds. If I want more or less, I can then bring my knob to that position and go more or less. So a really cool way to see what the parameter value is before you twist the knob. And again, if you don't look at what the value is, the parameter itself is going to jump to wherever that knob is the second you move it a little bit. So it's just going to jump to wherever the physical position is. A little bit of a downside. There's some functionality that other keyboards have where it's, I don't know exactly what they call it, but it's a soft parameter value. So the value won't actually change until you hit that value with the knob. The Nord is not like that. It's just going to jump to wherever. So if we twist feedback, if we hold monitor and twist that, it's set on 5. But if we just twist that here, notice it automatically just jumped right down to where the bottom of that knob is. So we'd have to bring that up to 5 in order to have it be what the parameter value is set within the program itself. So that's tip number one, using that monitor function. Anytime you're making an adjustment to a program and to a parameter value, hit monitor, twist the knob. I use it all the time just so I know where the value's at, and then I can adjust it from there. Now, tip number two is the solo function. Again, something I use every time I'm building sounds on the Nord Stage 4 is a super convenient feature that allows you to solo a single layer, or you can solo sections. So let's talk about section solos here first. It's really easy to do. Let's turn our organ and our synth on. Actually, let's do something better. Let's hold shift and go all the way back to bank A, and we're going to go with program 11 here. So this one's got organ, it's got piano, and it's got synth. Playing that together, we hear all of it together. So let's say we wanted to hear only what was going on with the piano section. We've got two layers active here, A and B. They're layered together because they're both on. And let's say we want to just hear what's happening with the piano. What we can do here is hold down on the on button for that section, and that's going to go ahead and mute the other two sections, leaving just the piano on. Then if we want to bring the others in, we just tap those on buttons for those sections. Pretty cool. We could do the same thing over here, synth section. And organ section. Again, we could bring those back and then go organ section. So that's how you solo sections. Now, what if we wanted to just solo a single layer? Let's take the synth section, for example. Hear everything together, but we want to hear what's happening on an individual layer. We have this solo button here to the right of our screen. Tap on that, and then tap on the layer that you want to solo. Now we're on layer A of the synth section. Layer B. C. And we can do this without changing anything. We're leaving that solo button on. Can jump over the piano. Piano layer A. And the organ. And then we can tap solo and it unsolos everything. So great way to isolate a single layer or a section in order to work on things. So it keeps the effects and everything for that layer active, but it mutes all the other layers so you can hear that one independent layer, make your adjustments, and then unsolo. And what's great, I love that you can jump around on the different layers while solo's active. And I'll use that again to make some adjustments, especially if I'm using effects, tweaking those a little bit. I'll jump around solo and then hear it all together by taking solo off. Really cool tip number two. Now, tip number three, speaking of kind of the effect side of things, is the variations to the effects. So if you came up from previous generations of the Nord Stage lines, your effects over here, you've got the type for the different effect units, right? And so on the Nord Stage 4, they added another variation to each type of effect. So let's go ahead and let's jump to just like a white grand. We'll go with program A21. Nothing for effects going on here. So let's go ahead and turn on the reverb. And we'll bring that room reverb up to about 4. And then let's go ahead and change that to maybe the stage. And we're going to make that dark. Now, of course, the bright dark is new to the Nord Stage 4, and that just gives you different frequency responses for the reverb. Amazing little feature. But let's talk about the variations. So anytime we want to access a variation, we just hold shift and tap on that type button again. So the stage, let's just cycle through these, and you'll see on the screen, it's giving me the name of the effect type within the reverb unit. So just stage. If we hold Shift and tap on that type button, it goes to stage choral. Turn the variation off, again by holding Shift, tapping on the type button. And these variations exist for every single one of these different effect types. So essentially, you're getting double the amount of effects. And they're not necessarily completely different effects, but it's a variation of, in our case, the stage reverb. Could jump down, and I've talked about this a lot, the cloud reverb. You've got the cathedral reverb without the variation on. You'll notice this little LED here is lit when the variation's on and not lit when it's off. And so cathedral, and then turn the cloud or the choral reverb on. Super cool, and it gives you just a ton of additional options when you're using the effects. These exist for all of these. We could turn this off, come up to our, let's say, our auto pan, go into the variation. Has a little bit more pump to it. So again, play around with these and kind of see what you like. I've found that I'll kind of like bounce between the different variations and figure out exactly what I want for my program. And it's really cool that they've given you those extra variations, because it just kind of opens the doors up even more for just building programs and the capabilities there. So that's tip number 3. Tip number 4 has to do with the view that we see here on our program screen. And there's a button here called Program View Preset Name. And what's really cool about this is we can change our overall view of what we see when we're calling up programs. So let's call up something that's got some good layers to it. Let's come over here, see if we've got one that has everything. Wow. So we've got one here, B11, the ballad layer WHL. So pretty cool sound there. And what we're seeing here, the bank, the page, the program. So essentially bank B, page 1, program 1. Could cycle through them with these program buttons here. We've got the name of the program, ballad layer. Is that a whale? No. And then we've got our organ, piano, and synth sections. And what you're going to see here is either the preset name from the preset library or the active layer. In this case, we're seeing the sound that's selected for our active layer here in the piano line. The organ, we could switch that, and there's only one organ going on there. And then the synth, wide triangles, pure saw, and pure saw. So again, we're seeing here the actual sound or sample name within each section as we move between those active layers. Now, we could change 2 things here. Let's talk about the presets first. So if these were built using presets, can hold Shift and tap on this Program View Preset Name button, and it's going to turn preset names off. So now as I move between these, it wasn't leveraging presets, and so it's probably a bad example there. But what that'll do is give you the sample name like it's doing there. And if it was using presets, then we would see, and you'll see actually a good example here is in the synth section. This is with preset name off. Again, you can see on the screen, show preset name off. We're doing that by holding Shift, tapping on that button. So now we're seeing these pure saw, shape triangle, but if we turn preset name back on, you'll see it's preset 133, which is preset bank 1, preset 33 within the synth preset library, and it's the wide triangles preset. So pretty cool that you can change whether you see the preset name or the active layer name. Now, we can also change this entire view in what we see by just cycling through 3 different options with this Program View button. So number 1, this is my favorite and my go-to, and this is actually number 2. And this is showing us just kind of a general overview of our program. If we tap on this again, this gives us an expanded view. So rather than giving us just the active layer and the sound that's on there, it's breaking that out. It's smaller up here with our program name and our bank page and program number. And then down below that, we have the organ section, piano section, and synth section. And it's giving us the name of the sample for each layer, as well as the size of the sample, large and small. Now, because we have preset name on, we're not seeing a breakout. We're only seeing the preset. So we could hold shift and tap on preset name to turn that off. And because with this actual program, only one layer is active in the synth section, it's only showing us the active layers. If we turned all of them on by tapping all 3 on buttons underneath the layers at once, now you'll see shape, triangle, pure saw, pure saw. So just again, and you'll notice the morph assign, that's why that volume's down there. It's tied to the volume. Again, we could turn those off and get back to the way it was. Turn preset name on. Again, I'm going pretty quick here, but just kind of showing you what this is an expanded view of each layer within the sections, breaking those out there, and pretty cool. Then we could tap it again, and this just gives us a really simple view. So this first one here is just the program bank, program page, and program number, 1 and 1, and then the name of the program, and then nothing down here. What this is going to do is, if we were to use the monitor feature, for example, it's going to show us those parameter values and things like that in this lower section here. Again, I like number 2, which is just your standard active layer, and then for each section, and then the program name and bank information there. So that's tip number 4, is that program view preset name button and how you can kind of customize what you're seeing here on the screen. Now, finally, tip number 5, I've talked about this in other videos, but in case you missed it, it's a really important and handy thing to do here, and that is the layer initialize. So what this does is, let's say we want to build a sound and we want to just kind of get back to a blank or a base starting point. Because if we were here, we wanted to build a sound, like we've got all of these effects that we'd have to clear, turn off, and it's already kind of messed up for a blank slate. So we want to get back to just a blank slate. The way we can do that is using the layer init function. So hold down on shift and tap on layer init. So you're going to see here on the screen that we can initialize a few different things here. So number 1, we could initialize everything. If we did that, it would initialize all the organ layers, piano layers, and synth layers, and get us back to a blank slate. We could also just initialize the organ, and it initializes the A and the B together. That's the only option you have there. And when we do that, if we come back here and turn these off and come back to our organ, it's a blank slate. So we could come in here. Let me just bring the volume up for that layer. It's kind of a basic B3 sound that we could then build on. Let's come back into layer init. And we can initialize the piano layers and the synth layers. So what we could do is, let's come over, turn our piano section on. And as we tap on the 2 layers, we can choose which one we want to initialize. So notice I tapped on B, I could initialize piano layer B. And if I exit out of that, and let's just turn A off, so we've got B. When you initialize it, it just brings it back to a basic white grand with no effects. Now notice it didn't kind of erase our volume level there, and that's okay. We can bring that volume up. And from there, we could build our sound, add effects and everything. But what it's going to do is it's going to just initialize it back to that base sample. And then we can also do that with the synth section. Let's turn that on, go back into layer init, and notice we can choose A, B, or C of our layers. So we can initialize all 3 of these. And again, what this is going to do is, it's not actually like erasing our volume and layer on-offs. It's taking that sample and getting us back to that base sample. That pure saw for the synth, white grand for here, and a basic B3 for the organ section. Now we could do all of them by layer init and then tapping all. Just what it does is initializes all the layers, all the sections, and activates layer A of the piano section. Really great way to then start from your basic starting point, add your effects and things like that. So one other function that's related to the initialize is the sound initialize within the synth section. So let's take layer A, we initialize that back to the pure saw. Let's change that to, let's say, an FM harmonic E. So that's just a pure waveform, right? We've made no customizations, but let's just do a couple of things. Let's turn the filter on, give us somewhere around like a 450. And let's turn the amp on. Do a really quick attack on that. Let's turn our voicing to legato. And let's bring in a bit of glide. And I can take my decay to infinity. So we've kind of customized this weird little lead sound. So let's go back to the waveform screen by tapping on this waveform button without holding shift. So let's say we want to get rid of the customizations we made and get back to that base waveform. We can do that. If we did a layer init on synth layer A, it would bring us back to the pure saw. But we want to just get back to the waveform we selected, the raw version, without these customizations. We can do that. It's kind of, let's call it a semi-init, and it's just initializing either the sample or the analog waveform we have selected. When we tap on that, it brought us back. The only thing it doesn't do is like turn the glide off or the voicing. But it got rid of our envelope and it reset that, reset our filter, and kind of brought us back to that bass sound again. So that's tip number 5. Again, to recap, we talked about tip number 1 was using the monitor function. Tip number 2 was soloing your layers and your sections. Tip number 3 was the effect variations. Tip number 4 was changing our program view. And tip number 5 was using the layer initialize. So I hope that was helpful for you guys. A lot of fun going through this. It's super fun just to mess around with the Nord. Hopefully that was helpful and helps just kind of improve your workflow as you're building and adjusting sounds on the Nord Stage 4. Again, if you're interested in kind of a walkthrough of all the foundational components, check out my training course. Find that on my website, dsoundman.com. I've got sound packs on there as well, so check those out, including the free piano one that has 8 of my favorite piano programs that I've put together. But if you've got any questions around what I went over in this video, feel free to throw those down in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks for watching. Stay inspired. Keep making that music.